Black people, they don't want you to believe that. They don't want you to know who you are because you're Indian. Not those type of Indians. The ones in America. Not in the 7-Elevens. In the reservations. You were indigenous to this land and you own this promised land. But they don't want you to know that.
Francis Chris Whistling said, and this is the basis for my discussion tonight, guys, on why racism exists, but also relating to the unspoken rules navigating interracial dating in a divided world. So I am going to play this lecture, then we're going to go into modern times and what's going on in the modern world. So thank you for joining me.
About what is going on. See, we've been thinking, and God bless Dr. Martin Luther King, a minister but a great political scientist. He said it's about love. Everybody should love. And he got
as a framework to say this is the reason why Black men are often reflected in a negative manner in the media, because our genetics are so profound that no matter what race we mix with, you're going to see evidence of that in the offspring. And so that, for some reason, that bothers people, right? Now, the crazy thing about this is the precise reason why they after Black.
Take over their buildings. New York was already there for thousands of years. San Francisco was there for thousands of years. Los Angeles was there for thousands of years. They were built by the indigenous people who were black and Indians as well. The black people, they weren't brought over by slaves. They are the original owners of America. Black people, African Americans. They don't come from Africa. They were already here.
First, they intended that the children of tribal Indians who resided on reservations and owed their direct allegiance to their tribes would not be entitled to birthright citizenship, but the children of assimilated Indians who had left their reservations and had established permanent residence among the body politic of the states would be entitled to birthright citizenship.
By the end of this video, we will definitively conclude who, in fact, is the indigenous and who is native. They are absolutely two different people, two different classes. And we have been debating about who is native because we have already identified our
Elk was not allowed to vote. The ruling denied citizenship to many Native Americans. It wasn't until the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924 that all Native Americans born in the U.S. were granted citizenship. Why is this case important? It showed how the U.S. legal system treated Native Americans as separate and denied them rights. It highlighted the limits of the 14th Amendment at the time. It was a major setback for Native American civil rights until the law changed decades later. Okay, so that's a simplified version of what was going on, guys. Stay with me. Can you stay with me? Okay? Stay with me. Because this is some heavy stuff. So that was in
the history of the clause. The clause was framed by the 39th Congress to constitutionalize the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which had been passed by that same Congress just 2 months earlier. The 1866 Act explicitly denied birthright citizenship to persons quote, subject to any foreign power, close quote, and to, quote, Indians not taxed, close quote. It is clear from the debate in the 39th Congress that Congress decided to replace this language with subject to the jurisdiction thereof, not because Congress suddenly and without any comment decided to broaden the scope of birthright citizenship from the act. Rather, Congress was concerned that the phrase Indians not taxed language generated uncertainty about the citizenship status of the children of Indians, primarily rich and poor Indians. First, they intended that the children of tribal Indians who resided on reservations and owed their direct allegiance to their tribes would not be entitled to birthright citizenship, but the children of assimilated Indians who had left their reservations and had established permanent residence among the body politic of the states would be entitled to birthright citizenship.
And so, to further show you that we're dealing with two different types of Indians, the indigenous Indians and later the native Indians, we can look to the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924 that was signed into law on June 2nd, 1924, which is actually called the Snyder Act, that granted citizenship to Native Americans. So the Native Americans did not become citizens until 1924. And clearly, according to Congress, the lawyers and the scholars, the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which brought forth the 14th Amendment in 1868, referred to two different types of Indians. There was an indigenous Indian that they fought against and that they put on the Trail of Tears, and those who didn't go on the trail assimilated, they absorbed into the system. Those are the Indians that we're claiming.
Z will be the last generation with white majority in the US. Gen Z Americans born between 1997 and 2012 will be the last generation with a white majority, a new study has found. Updated US Census data suggests non-Hispanic white people will make up less than half the country's population by around 2045.
Okay, guys. And in closing, I'm going to play this last video, and I want you to really think about what the speaker is saying. It's going to be about a minute clip, but really pay attention to what she's saying and how it relates to this problem. The problem that I've been highlighting over and over again is that white women are choosing to date non-white men. Non-white men are blacks, but did not free the Asians or Indians, okay? Then he's going to talk about the Elk versus Wilkinson Supreme Court case. So he goes into a spiel about how the 13th Amendment helped free slaves on paper that was African in the Americas, but not the Native Americans. So let's look at Elk versus Wilkinson Supreme Court case of so that's Brigham Young, okay? A lot of people forget that California, the West Coast states, parts of the southern states were a part of Mexico, including Florida. So when Mexico becomes an independent country in 1821, this is going to bring them into conflict with the United States, because the United States wasn't as massive as it is now. They own less territories. The United States really expanded half its size during the Louisiana Purchase. Well, the Louisiana Purchase, part of the reason that happened was because of a huge slave revolt in Haiti.
So there were uprisings in the United States, there were uprisings, slave rebellions in Mexico, and the second president of Mexico, Vicente Guerrero, then outlawed slavery. And then he was later killed. So in Mexico, slavery was illegal. And then in the United States, slavery was legal. And this is going to bring them into contention. Things got so bad for the Mayans of Yucatan during this time period. And they were put in this servitude and having to do all of this backbreaking work. Their women were beaten. The men were beaten. They had to work in these fields. And they had these overseers that would just beat them and mistreat them and even unalive them. So what began to take place was one happening where an entire Mayan village named of Tepec was completely wiped out of men, women, children, and even the elderly. And the whites and the Mestizos murdered all of these people. So the Mayans are going to start a caste war, which lasts for a very long time, where they try to expel all of the whites and all of the Mestizos out of the Yucatan by unaliving them. So after the war with Spain and Mexico becomes Mexico, the problem that Mexico is going to face outside of the bankruptcy that they're experiencing and the political divisions is that it's a vast territory. We're talking about all the way up to Oregon, all the way down to, at this time, El Salvador and Honduras. So Mexico is a lot bigger than the Mexico that we now know as Mexico. We're trying to explain how Mexico got decreased in size to the point that it is now. But they have so many different problems because within Mexico, you have the Spaniards, you have Peninsulars, you have Mestizos, Creoles, Indios, Negroes, and at this time period, all of the white clergy owned everything. They owned all of the land, and the people that don't own any. After Mexico becomes Mexico and they end the war with Spain, Spain effectively still has a vast amount of territory. So what Spain does is they say, hey, you can't trade with all of the other colonies. Now, this is going to have far-reaching consequences because imagine you're a country, right? And you can't control what comes in and what goes out. You can't control your ports. So while they won the battle, it was still an economic war still taking place that Spain was waging on Mexico, hence why Mexico was poor. So the people in the Yucatan, the ruling class, they had closer relationships with the Spaniards because it's a port area on the Gulf. So they wanted to do business with Cuba, which was still a part of Spain, but the problem was that the governors of Mexico and the president had outlawed trade with Spain. The people of the land, the invaders had to find a way to connect their Catholic religion with the indigenous religion of the land. So the indigenous people had a mother goddess by the name of Tenochtitlan. She was a mother goddess that all of the local people praised, worshiped, had statues of, and was very close to them and was a representation of their belief system. Well, the Catholics, they had the Virgin Mary. And so this figure was merged into the two. So the indigenous people related to the Catholic religion by saying, okay, their goddess is like our goddess. And as years went on, 100 years, 200 years, the images fused together and their belief system was united. And so in this video, I am trying to explain how their belief system strengthened their unity. So when we believe the same thing, it makes us see one another as like, right? Instead of an other. So regardless of how the people looked, whether they were Indios, which is Indian, whether they was Masito, whether they was Creoles, whether they were Pensalares, whether they were coming fresh off the boat from Spain. This belief system united the people. So the legend of the Virgin of Guadalupe is that this man named Juan Diego in the 16th century seen an apparition, and the apparition came to him and spoke to him and let him know that although that all of this was taking place in Mexico
versus Wilkinson's. So here's a simplified version of the Supreme case. John Elk, a Native American, left his tribe and started living among white citizens in Omaha, Nebraska. He wanted to vote, claiming that he had become a U.S. citizen by just choosing to live outside his tribe and follow U.S. laws. But Charles Wilkins, his registrar, refused to let him register to vote, saying Elk was not a U.S. citizen. Main question: can a Native American become a U.S. citizen just by leaving their tribe and living like a U.S. citizen? What did the Supreme Court decide? The court said no. Just leaving your tribe and living in U.S. society doesn't make you a citizen. Why did they say that? The 14th Amendment, you have to have scarcity for something to be valuable. So they make the resources scarce. We fight over the resources. By the very nature of living in a system like that, most people are not going to have their safety needs met. Most people are not going to experience love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family. Family is third on a hierarchy, a sense of connection, a sense of belonging. And so what do we call that? And it's in this world we call it individualism, but in psychology we would call it alienation. People feel alienated from others, right? What's a word that became popular a couple years ago? Antisocial. People started saying, what happens is that the Spaniards are going to create a caste system. And the caste system, let me show you this. So they are going to create this caste system. Okay. And in the caste system, what the Spaniards are going to do is they're going to say that the white male mixed with the white female is at the top of the chart. Then it's going to go into all of the different makeups, and then at the very end of the caste system is when the darker skinned people are mixing with one another. Okay, and this is called the caste system. And this caste system is what is going to spread around the world. He's working in Azores and the Cape Verde Islands with the Portuguese, and then he's going to find himself in the New World. Okay, when he goes to the New World, he begins trafficking Native Americans in Mexico City. Okay, and this is in 1567. Now, at this time when all of this is going on, I want you guys to keep in mind that when this trade was going on, that it was people being sent from this part of the world, the Americas, to Spain and Africa, and you had people from Africa and Europe being sent to the New World. Okay, it was a back and forth. It was a back and forth trade that was going on. Okay, and I'm going to show you this by telling you what was taking place. So we're going to have to recap again. Okay.
Native Americans in Spain will begin to find themselves in the courts, and they're going
So restricting the reach of the 13th Amendment. The Slaughterhouse Cases, 1873. Background. A group of butchers in Louisiana challenged the state law granting a monopoly to one slaughterhouse, claiming it violated their rights under the 13th and 14th Amendments. the ruling. The Supreme Court ruled that the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, was intended only to eliminate the institution of slavery as practiced before the Civil War, not to address general labor or civil rights issues. I'm going to read that again. The Supreme Court ruled that the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, was intended only to eliminate the institution of slavery as practiced before the Civil War, not to address general labor or civil rights issues. The Peonage Act of 1867 explained that they were trying to end bondage, debt bondage. Peonage is a system in which a person is forced to work to pay off a debt, often under coercive or exploitative conditions. Though technically not slavery, it created conditions similar to slavery and was especially common in the Southwest and later in the South after the Civil War. People, often Black or Mexican laborers, were trapped in endless cycles of debt, legally bound to their employer, unable to leave or seek other work until the debt was paid, often nearly impossibility, often a near. You're trying to be something you're not. Bro, we're from the Americas. We were in the Americas before there was an America. We were in Mexico before Mexico was Mexico. Look at this. You get what I'm saying? And peace to the ancestors. Respect to them. And I would also like to state that I think that modern terms really mess us up. Like, I think modern terms really mess us up, you guys. Like, when we start using terms like black, white, yellow, and stuff like that, we can't apply those terms to the ancient world, right? Check this.
That human beings have been in the Americas before they were in Europe, and that becomes
that's crazy.
That's a door that opens all kinds of possibilities which have been neglected, and you know this opens the possibility that human beings have been in the Americas before they were in Europe, and that becomes
that's crazy.
That's a door that opens all kinds of possibilities.
Now, since that one of them said it, do you believe us? But it's not for me. I don't care if you believe me, because I'm gonna live my life regardless, right? But what I'm saying is, he's saying it. You get what I'm saying? So my question is, are Black Americans indigenous to the Americas? So hold on, I'm getting a phone call. So are Black Americans indigenous to the Americas, guys? And I would say yes. Okay? I would say yes. But see, when we show images like this can anger some people. Like, it doesn't get much realer than that. Like, just look at it. I don't even have to, like, I could end the stream right there. How could something from 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, to what's going on now coexist seamless? And somebody would try to argue with me. I'm saying, get some exposure.
You want to hear something really fascinating?
Sure. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture.
Now listen to what he's saying. Ooh. Listen to what he's saying. He's telling you. He's telling you. It don't get much. He can't. Come on. That's not what I'm saying. This dude got millions of dollars to do this research, and this is what he's saying, and people will still get mad. He said before the Mayan, before the Aztec, they had people. Who they was? Black people. That's what he's saying.
Who are referred to Olmecs. We don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people because rubber producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. They're most famous for huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale of up to 20 to 25 tons in weight, which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic Native American features. One of the things I've realized.
Don't look like what? Now, what you gonna say to that? This is what the Mr. White guy is saying. This is what he's saying. This ain't what I'm saying. This what